The silence that followed my words wasn't empty. It was heavy, final, irreversible. Jake didn't move right away. For a second, he just looked at me, really looked, like he was trying to memorize every detail, every flicker of doubt, every trace of certainty. Then he exhaled slowly. Not relief, not fear, something in between. Then we stop pretending, he said quietly. Those words should have scared me. And they did. But beneath the fear, there was something else. Something stronger. Something I had been denying for far too long. He stepped back. Not away from me emotionally, but physically. Like he was giving me space. Like he was making sure this was still my choice. Sit up, he said gently. I pulled the sheet tighter around myself as I slowly pushed up from the table. The room felt different now. No longer just warm. Now it felt exposed. Like every wall had disappeared and we were standing in the open, with nothing left to hide behind. Jake ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the room before stopping. This changes everything, he said. Not a question. A fact. I know, I whispered. And once we step into this, he continued, his voice tightening slightly, there's no going back to how things were. There it was. The truth we had both been avoiding. This wasn't just about feelings. This wasn't just about one moment. This was about consequences. Real ones. My career. I started, but the words caught in my throat. My reputation. Your future. Your father. Lost the right to control anything about your life a long time ago. Jake cut in, his tone firm. Not angry. Certain. This isn't about control, I said, shaking my head. It's about reality. He stepped closer again, slower this time. Measured. Intentional. And the reality, he said softly, is that I care about you. More than I should. More than I planned to. My chest tightened. Because that wasn't just his truth. It was mine too. Do you think this is easy for me? I asked quietly. Do you think I haven't fought this? I know you have, he said immediately. And that's exactly why I'm standing here right now, asking you to be honest with me. The room fell silent again. But this time it wasn't tense. It was fragile. Like one wrong word could shatter everything. I'm scared, I admitted. That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. His expression softened instantly. Of me, he asked. No, I said quickly. Of what this means. He nodded slowly. Good, he said. I blinked. Good. Yeah, he replied, a faint, almost sad smile forming. Because if you weren't scared, this wouldn't be real. That made sense. More than I wanted it to. He sat down on the edge of the bed, leaving space between us. Not touching. Not pushing. Just there. We don't have to decide everything tonight, he said. We don't even have to define it. I looked at him, confused. Then what do we do? He met my gaze. Steady. Grounded. We start with the truth. My heart pounded. And the truth is? I asked. That something changed between us a long time ago, he said. We just stopped pretending tonight. I swallowed hard. Because he was right. Painfully right. And tomorrow? I asked. That question lingered longer than anything else. Because tomorrow meant reality. Tomorrow meant consequences. Tomorrow meant facing a world that wouldn't understand. Jake leaned back slightly, thinking. Tomorrow, he said slowly. We act like two people who are figuring things out. That sounds simple, I said. It's not, he replied. A small, humorless laugh escaped me. No, it's not. Because nothing about this was simple. Not the feelings. Not the history. Not the future waiting just outside this room. What about your father? I asked quietly. Jake's jaw tightened slightly. Not anger. Something deeper. I'll handle him, he said. That's not something you can just handle, I replied. No, he agreed. But it's something I won't let destroy this before it even begins. That word again. Begins. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt impossible. But instead, it felt inevitable. I looked down at my hands, still slightly trembling. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. Jake stood again, moving just a little closer. Not touching. Still giving me that choice. We figure it out, he said softly. Step by step. I looked up at him. And for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel trapped. I felt grounded. Because no matter how complicated this was, one thing was clear. We weren't pretending anymore. And sometimes, the truth is messy, complicated, even a little dangerous. But it's still the truth. And as I sat there, caught between fear and something that felt dangerously close to hope, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. This wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point. And whatever came next, there was no going back. Morning didn't feel like morning anymore. It felt like a countdown. Every second stretched thin with anticipation, with dread, with the quiet understanding that something irreversible was about to happen. Jake stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out like he was bracing himself for impact. I watched him from across the room. My heart caught somewhere between fear and certainty. "Are you sure about this?" I asked softly. He didn't turn immediately, didn't rush to answer. Then finally, "Yes." One word. Solid. Unshaken. "I'm not hiding this," he added, turning to face me now. "And I'm not letting him decide what this means for us." Us. That word still felt new. Dangerous. Powerful. "He's still your father," I said carefully. "And you're still someone he hurt," Jake replied, his tone tightening just slightly. That hit deeper than I expected. Because it was true. And truths like that don't disappear. They just wait. "I don't want this to turn into a war," I admitted. Jake walked closer, stopping just in front of me. "It won't," he said. Then after a pause, "Unless he makes it one." High voltage the confrontation. It happened faster than I expected. And slower. At the same time. David didn't knock. He never did. The front door opened with the familiar sound I used to associate with comfort. Now, it felt like a warning. "Sarah?" His voice echoed through the house. My stomach dropped instantly. Jake glanced at me once. Not asking. Not hesitating. Just ready. "I'll talk to him," he said. "No," I started, but it was too late. Footsteps approached. Heavy. Confident. Unaware. And then he appeared in the doorway. For a brief moment, everything froze. His eyes moved from me. To Jake. To the space between us. And something shifted. Not confusion. Recognition. "What's going on?" David asked slowly. No one answered right away. Because how do you explain something like this in a single sentence? Jake stepped forward. "I need to talk to you," he said. David let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. "About what?" Silence again. Thick. Suffocating. Then Jake said it. "I'm with her." The words landed like a shockwave. David blinked once. Then again. Like his mind was refusing to process what he'd just heard. "What?" "I'm with Sarah," Jake repeated more firmly this time. And just like that, everything exploded. "Oh, you've lost your mind," David snapped, his voice rising sharply. "This isn't a joke," Jake said. "You think I'm laughing?" David shot back. His gaze snapped to me now. Sharp. Accusing. "Tell me this isn't what it sounds like." I opened my mouth. But nothing came out. Because the truth? The truth was exactly what it sounded like. "Say something," he demanded. Jake stepped slightly in front of me. Not aggressively. Protectively. "Don't," Jake said, his voice low but firm. "Don't put this all on her." David's expression darkened. "Oh, I see," he said slowly. "This is her fault now." "No. It's not about fault." "Then what is it about?" David snapped. Jake didn't hesitate. "It's real." That word cut deeper than anger ever could. David laughed again, but this time it was different. Bitter. Sharp. "Real," he repeated. "You're calling this real?" "Yes." No hesitation. No doubt. And that's what broke him. "You're my son," David said, his voice dropping dangerously low. "And I'm an adult," Jake replied. "And she was my wife." The room went completely silent. The weight of that statement hung in the air like something heavy enough to crush us all. Jake said quietly. David's jaw tightened. "You think that makes this okay?" he asked. "No," Jake said. "I think what makes it okay is that we didn't lie about it." That was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't just anger anymore. It was humiliation, betrayal, loss of control. David turned to me again. You couldn't find anyone else? He said, his voice cutting. My son, that one hurt. More than I expected. But before I could respond, enough, Jake said. And this time, there was no softness in his voice. You don't get to talk to her like that. David stared at him, stunned. Look at you, he said slowly, standing there like you've done something noble. Jake didn't move, didn't flinch. I'm standing here, he said, because I'm not ashamed. That silence again. But this time, it wasn't fragile. It was final. If it had ended there, maybe things would have been easier. But stories like this, they don't stay private. They spread. A conversation overheard. A glance noticed. A detail shared. Within days, people knew. At the gallery, whispers followed me through every room. At school, colleagues avoided eye contact or stared too long. Phones buzzed. Messages came. Some curious, some judgmental, some cruel. And the worst part? No one asked for the truth. They just decided it. You've seen this, right? Is it actually true? I didn't expect this from you. Every word chipped away at something inside me. But every time I felt like breaking, Jake was there. Not loudly, not dramatically, just there. Steady, unmoving. We knew this would happen, he said one night, as I sat staring at my phone. I didn't think it would feel like this, I admitted. He sat beside me, close enough to remind me, not close enough to overwhelm. It won't last forever, he said. I looked at him, tired, uncertain. How do you know? He held my gaze. Because people get bored, he said simply. That made me laugh. A small one, but real. And until then? I asked. Until then, he said, taking my hand gently. We don't let them define us. Everything had changed. Not just how people saw us, but how we saw ourselves. We weren't hiding anymore. But we weren't untouched either. This wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. It wasn't something the world would understand. But it was ours. And as I looked at him in that moment, steady, certain, unafraid, I realized something important. Love doesn't always arrive in perfect circumstances. Sometimes, it arrives in chaos. And the real question isn't, is this easy? It's, is this worth it? And standing there, in the middle of judgment, whispers, and consequences, I finally had my answer. Yes.